Welcome to the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. I'm your host, Dr. Matthew Tanner, the founder of Wounded Leadership Ministries. You know, the calling to shepherd God's church brings some of life's greatest joys and adventures. Yet this calling also comes with profound challenges. Many church leaders face those challenges in silence. Nearly every pastor will experience the pain of unjustified termination or forced resignation at least once in their ministry journey. On this podcast, we create a safe place where wounded leaders can share their stories, find community, and discover pathways toward healing and a renewed purpose. Each episode will bring honest conversations with those who have walked through the valley of ministerial suffering and emerged stronger on the other side. Whether you're currently serving in ministry, recovering from church trauma yourself, or simply want to better understand the challenges that are facing today's church leaders, this podcast is for you. It will offer biblical wisdom, practical strategies, and genuine hope. Now let's begin today's conversation. Welcome to the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. I'm your host, Dr. Matthew Tanner, founder of Wounded Leadership Ministries, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today on Stories from the Wounded, a guy that I have known for a long time. We survived theology class together.
20 plus years ago.
20 plus years ago, we've known each other. And so I know this story.
Your beard was shorter then.
The beard was not
You
existent.
didn't even have a beard.
No, I've since grown up.
Neither, I don't think I did either.
No, man, we were so young.
I know.
We thought we
Babies.
knew everything.
Babies.
And now we know for sure we don't.
More than the guys sitting in the front.
Well, of course, Dr. Devine always told us, we were already pastors and in school, and he already told us, I can't teach you anything. You're already pastors. Yeah, we've carried that mantra for 20-something years. Eric, introduce yourself, man. Dr. Eric Turner.
Yeah, so Eric Turner, I teach at Hannibal LaGrange University, among other things. So my main role there is to do, I teach in the area of New Testament, biblical worldview, basically anything in biblical studies. I teach Greek, sometimes Hebrew. I also direct and kind of programming for a Free Society grant, which brings speakers to campus that focuses on free market economics and cultural institutions like the church. I direct our Center for Christian Worldview, and I think that's enough.
Yeah.
So Hannibal native, grew up here, graduated high school. I came back after 25 years. I was one of those kids that, jokingly said, I'll never come back home.
And
So
God sent you.
here I am, and we've been here for 11 years, and before that, Kansas City and surrounding areas, and so it's good to be. It's been good to be home.
Awesome, man. Well, as you know, this is Wounded Leadership, Stories from the Wounded. We find healing through the stories of being hurt, really, by ministry and by leadership. So, best place to start is at the beginning. We're just going to let you authentically just share your story, and we'll
Sure.
just kind of walk through it. So take us back to where it all started.
Yeah, for me, I think. So a little background just on my sort of history. Before I was called into ministry later in life, right? I wasn't one of these kids called out of the youth group, who had a clear vision of at 17 or 16 that I was going to be in some type of ministry. In fact, my undergrad degree isn't even in biblical studies or anything related to Christian ministry. It's in actually business administration. And so I was 33 years old, 32, 33, when the Lord made it clear to me that I was supposed to be a pastor. And honestly, at that time, maybe, as I think back about it and reflect on it, maybe that was a good thing that I had no clue of what it meant to be a pastor or even what a pastor did. And so we were living in Kansas City at the time. I was working for Cracker Barrel, and really, the funny thing, my wife and I were just talking about this the other night, is with our son Chase, who's getting ready to start Midwestern Seminary here in another week.
Yeah.
And so I was just sharing with him, just like when I first started, I had no clue. I just knew that God had called me, and so I didn't have any sort of frame of reference to draw from other than the local church. My dad lived here in Hannibal. He worked at a chemical plant for 37 years. My grandfather was a street department worker. I had uncles and aunts and stuff who were highly involved in the church and maybe taught Sunday school, but no sort of vocational ministers, right? And so I walked into ministry kind of rather both a little blind and a little ignorant. And I think that in some ways that protected me from some of the hurt, but in other ways it opened up for, some things that sort of went not the way I anticipated them to go, because you don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, and so there are a lot of times where, you make a mistake or there's something you do in ignorance in the church early on is like, okay, yeah, you're young, it's your first pastorate. But then if you're there 7 years, then it's like, well, maybe you should know better by now, or we have different expectations of you. And so I was learning, as you mentioned, when I first started pastoring was when we met in seminary. And so I was learning right alongside in my classes, alongside guys like you and other people. And so it kind of really kind of walking into it a little bit blind and ignorant was a good thing. But I think initially long term, it set me up, not I want to say it set me up for failure, but it set me up for issues that arose. Right.
Yeah, because I find, and I've done several of these already, and I find that pastoring is one of those fields where you need to learn because you've never done this before. You need to learn, but a lot of times you're not allowed to. You got to step in like knowing.
Right. And there's this expectation that like, you know how to preach, you know how to administrate things in the church, you know how to set vision and strategy and all of those kinds of things. But for me, it was like, I just thought, I wanted to preach and I knew I wanted to love people. And that was sort of what I headed into it with, that sort of attitude. I kind of think, reflecting on it, I mean, probably for me, maybe this is the right way to think about it. I think I had kind of like an idealistic version of what ministry was supposed to be like. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. 100%. Where did that come from?
I mean, I think just being a church member, just observing what I always observed our pastors like, hey, I mean, he preaches a great sermon every Sunday. Hey, I mean, I'm getting fed.
Yeah.
Hey, he's he cares about me. He's there to pray for me. It's always had this view of like pastors as wow, this is going to be like the most fulfilling, easy thing I've ever done in my life because I'm serving the Lord. And why wouldn't everyone be happy with me if I'm serving the Lord faithfully?
So it's one big, long mission trip.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's like, well, why wouldn't that be the case? And that's that ignorance coming through, right? It's like when you get down and involved in people's lives and ministering to people, it's messy. And so, for the first few years, I mean, I remember the first church that I went to, I told my wife, I very clearly, I was like, I'm intentionally not going to try to change anything unless it's absolutely horrendously heretical. Right.
Right.
I mean, I'm just going to try to learn people, learn who they are. I'm just going to try to love them. I'm going to preach. We're going to do our programming the way it's historically been laid out. I think the only looking back, I mean, the only mistake I made the first couple of years of pastoring, big mistake. This is going to sound ridiculous. So we had a picture of Jesus.
Oh. You did
in the sanctuary. And when I say picture of Jesus, it was the 19,
hair.
the glamour shot Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like right, blonde haired, the blue eyes. He's gazing off into the, to the distance. Imagining how much he loves us, and it's like that picture was up on the wall. Well, we had done a new directory at the church, and so this directory they did this really cool thing where they took every single small photo of the families and made it into kind of like this collage. So that if you stood far away from it, you saw the church. But as you got closer, you saw the people. There's a church. Open up there. There's the people. It's kind of that. And I thought, where's the most logical place to put that? And I thought, well, the picture of Jesus is right by where everyone came in and out of the sanctuary.
That would have, yeah, prominent.
And I thought in my mind, I didn't ask permission. I just took the picture of Jesus down and moved it. And you would have thought
You removed Jesus from the church.
that I didn't remove him completely from church. I just moved him to a different wall. And you would have thought I trampled on the gospel.
Well, I mean, we laugh about that, but man,
But it was a huge deal. And people were
ordeal.
like, you need to move that back. I'm like, move what back? Move Jesus back. He's been there for as long as we can ever remember. I'm like, well, can't he move? So we laugh about those kind of things, but that was, I guess, maybe my sort of first, sort of shattering of sort of the honeymoon period is over, before then the love fest is done, and other than the other sort of funny story that came out of my first couple of years is, which I tell to my students a lot. So I didn't think a lot about time in preaching, like how long I preached. And this was really before the whole sort of, and I'm not knocking it, right? The whole sort of reform movement. I'm going to preach 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was probably preaching maybe, I don't know, 40, 35. And they were used to the pastor preaching like 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then, they could beat the Methodist to the buffet.
Right.
I mean, that's not a joke. That was literally. And so I'll never forget, one of the WMU ladies came up to me after church one day. Her name was Vera Lynn. And Vera said to me, Pastor, we had a meeting. And during that meeting, we talked about the fact that you're preaching way too long. And we just want you to know we're not happy about it. I was like, what? And I remember like thinking like, what have I done? I've made the WMU cartel mad. I was looking at for like a month. I was looking over my shoulder, thinking that one of them was going to stab me with a shiv and like pass it off to another one, and they're going to take me out.
Yeah, it's in that corner of the church.
And I joke about it now, but I was really literally like stressed. I would put my watch on the pulpit to make sure that I ended on time.
Yeah. Set an alarm.
Right. Just so I was like, I don't want to make people mad.
Reminded me of Dr. Aubrey's preaching class. Like the alarm goes off, you better quit.
And so I mean, physically, like even background, like what stress can do to you. So I grew up with like, as a teenager, I had a lot of ulcers and things like that. So it was like the ulcers were coming back. I was stressed out. I was just like what have I done? I mean, inherently my personality is I'm a people pleaser. I want people to be happy. I like people. I want to be liked. I hate it when I just, that person in your life doesn't like you just because of the way you walk. There's nothing you've done. Okay. And so it just ate me up inside for like a month until the head of the WMU, the lady, the Vera Lynn, the lady that told me that wasn't even like the chairperson of WMU. Carolyn came to me and said, Pastor, I just want you to know, we found out that Vera Lynn talked to you, and we just want you to know that she had brought that up in a meeting. She's right. But we had told her that she better not come talk to you. And she better respect her pastor.
And she took it upon herself.
She was wrong doing that, and we're sorry, and we'll take care of Vera Lynn. I was like, what do you? I was like, what do you mean you got to take care of her? I was like, what? But you see my point. Yeah. Those sorts of things, when you feel like you've upset someone in the church or a group of people.
Well, it's disheartening because you go in with this view of pastoring of you're just wanting to love people.
Yeah.
And trying not to upset the apple cart, but it doesn't matter what you do, it upset it.
I mean, call me crazy. I think one of the purposes of ministry is to love people like Jesus loves them.
That's kind of what I read.
And I mean, so when you trying to do that your best, and then you seemingly make a innocuous mistake, right? Like preaching too long. How dare you?
Well, and these things shouldn't be fatal flaws.
Right. And then you feel like someone's upset over that. I mean, I guess the fact that it did bother me said something about the way I viewed ministry. I would rather it be that way than be shrugging it off going, I'm just cold hearted.
Yeah, just
snake. I don't care about what they could be mad all they want. I'm going to preach. I'm the pastor of the church. I'm going to preach as long as I want.
right.
In fact, I might preach longer next Sunday.
Just because.
I'll show you. And when I'm preaching, I'll look right at you.
It's a stand down.
When I hit 35 minutes, I'm staring at the news section. Like, don't you dare get up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever, I didn't want to ever be, I wanted to be gentle and soft-hearted and love people like Jesus loved them. And so, those sort of events, as silly as they sound, sort of opened up the door for me to sort of understand that ministry is a very fragile thing because we deal with people who are broken.
Yeah. Including the one we see in the mirror.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. And I've had this conversation with people a lot lately. I don't know why this is. It's just sort of come to the surface again. But this idea that we cannot view our pastors as people who never make a mistake. And a lot of times we do that. We put them up on a pedestal and we say, don't you dare ever let me down. Because if you do, you've been discredited. Now, granted, we've seen a movement of, we could talk more about this as an ancillary topic, but we have seen a movement of where pastors have discredited themselves because of egregious things, right? I'm not talking about that. And I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is, a pastor doesn't live up to an unrealized expectation that he has that he was supposed to meet, that he had no idea he was supposed to meet that.
The unwritten rules.
Right? That like people put expectations on you that are both unrealistic and unspoken. Right? And then if you're over here trying to do this, you're focused on a ministry and they think you should be over here and all of a sudden they're mad at you. That's a different story than you embezzling money from a church.
1,000%.
Right.
So you find yourself like you're starting to run up against what I call the realities of vocational ministry, unfortunate realities. So keep going on the timeline. What happens next?
Yeah. So right about 5 years into my first pastorate in a pretty small town, which was known for, I mean, I don't know if it's known for it, but it seemed like tragedy sort of cyclically walked into the town in a personification sort of way. And I don't know, I still think about that to this day. I'm like, is it the town? Is that just normal life and it's magnified because it's a smaller community? I don't know the answer to that, but even, we had, kids dying car wrecks. I mean, we had suicides. We had, all things that happen everywhere. But maybe it's because it was a town of 1,000 people that it was everybody knows everybody. And so it was magnified. And so about 5 years in our ministry, the only way I can describe it that's accurate is to say that death walked into our community. And between January 1st and the middle of March, I did upwards of 27 to 30 funerals in that time period. It began with a house fire on New Year's Eve where we lost a 22-year-old couple, their 8-month-old baby, 2 10-year-old boys.
Wow.
And one of those 10-year-old boys was my son's best friend. And my son was 10 at the time. And actually, he was supposed to go, it was a New Year's Eve kind of sleepover thing. So the 2 22-year-olds and the 8-month-old, that couple, one of the 10-year-old boys was her brother. So this mom in our church lost her daughter, her son-in-law, her granddaughter, and her son, all in one night. And then the other 10-year-old boy was a friend in the community. And then my son Chase was a friend of this group as well. And the young man's name's Stony Mac, who I'd baptized 6 months earlier.
Wow.
He gave his heart to the Lord. His mom was a single mom. His dad actually was in a mental institution. He came from a very broken family, but she had come to church, brought her kids to church, and he got saved at VBS, man. It was like, of all things. And so I baptized him, but I had told my son Chase, he begged me to go to this New Year's Eve sleepover, and I told him no. And so that started everything.
Yeah.
Right. And then it began, and then we had some older people in the church who passed away. Normal, just
more expected,
more normal. Like death's never normal, but
right.
More of expected. I guess that's the right word. And I did a funeral for a 12-year-old boy that committed suicide.
Wow.
Which was hard. And then it ended in the middle of March with one of the deacons from our church. He was very much the patriarch of our church, died in a car fire.
Wow.
And so he was a World War II veteran, school teacher. Him and his wife were both school teachers, built their dream home outside the community, a log cabin. And he couldn't really walk well. He didn't want to ask for help. And so he would burn his trash in the ditch near his house. And he was sitting in his car, couldn't get out of his car, and was lighting the trash on fire and throwing it out the window. And then it blew back in and caught the car on fire. It was a windy day, blew back in, the car on fire, and he perished in the car.
Oh,
He was 80. I think I want to say he was like 85,
wow.
86 years old.
Yeah.
And, and so, for me, again, reflecting on that, it was like house fire, car fire. It was like bookended right of this time. And so I had dealt with funerals, I had dealt with death, but never on that scale. And so what that does to a person, especially to a pastor, and I've again talked to my students about this a lot, the wrong way to handle it, which I didn't know at the time, the wrong way to handle it was to delay your grief. And so that's what I did. I felt like, well, I'm the pastor of the church. Really, I was seen at that time as a leading spiritual figure in the community at large, because again, it was a small community. So I was really, I was like, I need to be strong. I need to be the spiritual one. I need to be the one that has the answers, that ministers to people. And so I didn't grieve properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so about a couple months after all that ended in May of that year, I just fell apart. I mean, there's no easy way to say it. I fell apart emotionally, physically. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I just felt awful. And what it was, I mean, Matt, what it was grief. When everyone else had kind of moved through the process of grief in a fairly healthy way, and sort of they've gotten to the point where they're moving on with their lives and things are getting more back to normal, everything for me became abnormal. And the church was like, what's wrong with our pastor? Like, what's going on with him? And so it came down to one of the deacons suggested that I take a sabbatical. I was working on a PhD at the time. Had started a PhD. The church had voted overwhelmingly to allow me to do that. A little backstory there. Our church had been kind of a waypoint church. You know what I mean by that?
Oh, yeah.
A waypoint church for guys from seminary who would come in. They'd pastor while they're in seminary, and then they'd leave and go to greener pastures,
Right.
whatever, that sort of
Something
like a stepping stone, maybe is a better way to say it. And so when I didn't leave after my master's degree was over, there was this sort of like, you could tell it was awkward.
Why is he still here?
Yeah, they're like, well, I used to tell people, like, they either think that I can't find a job, right?
Yeah.
Or oh my gosh, he's really not leaving.
He's actually
He really means it when he says he's staying until the Lord leads him out, right? And so it was this awkward sort of tension. And so as I started to pursue a PhD, the church voted overwhelmingly to do that. And
maybe this will get him out. No.
Maybe, maybe the PhD will kill him, which it almost did. But one of the deacons recognized, thankfully, he's my next door neighbor, still one of my closest friends, good friend. And he recognized what I was going through, and he said, Eric, I think what you need is a sabbatical.
Yeah, you need a break.
You need a break. We had a young guy that was youth pastoring for us at the church, and he was also a student at seminary. Like, he can step in to preach. I'm going to bring it to the deacons. You're going to take a month.
Yeah.
And so we met with the deacons. Everybody's like, yeah, that sounds great. Take the month of August off. There's really not much going on then anyway.
Yeah.
We're done with Vacation Bible School. We're done with mission trips.
School hadn't started yet.
School hasn't started. So take the month, be with your family, just rest.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank you. It was like, okay, this church gets it. All right. They really get it. And about 3 weeks into that, I got called to a deacons meeting, and they're like, basically, just to say it really clearly, it's like, well, we want you to decide whether or not you really want to be our pastor.
And you're like, where's this coming from?
Like, what? Like, your PhD's taking too much time away from you. And you need to decide whether you still want to pursue a PhD or want to be our pastors. They kind of put me between a rock and a hard place. They're like, choose PhD or choose to be our pastor. And I told my wife, I said, I feel really called to do this PhD work. And she said, well, I guess we're leaving then.
And you've already invested so much time in it.
And I could have fought. Here's the thing, Matt. I've invested a lot of time in it. I was a little over a year into it, and flourishing in it, doing really well. Clearly, it was what the Lord meant for me to do. And at that point, I had no fight left in me.
I was going to ask you, like, what made the decision to just say, "Fine, I'll just go"? Because I mean, you were already,
I think it was that
empty anyway.
I think it was that. I think I didn't have anything left to fight.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just devastated, had been through so much tragedy, so much heartache, so much pain. I'm like, I don't have the energy to fight this out.
Like, I don't care.
And I thought, well, if I do, well, here's the potential. Like, look, if I win, right? If you think of it a win-lose situation, if I win, then will those people who want me to leave the PhD and be the pastor, will they stay at the church?
Yeah, it's a no-win situation.
Or will they, And so I felt like in order to maybe keep the peace a little bit, and this is a way like of Lord saying it's time to move on. And so we made that hard decision. And I remember one of the deacons helping me load my trailer, my U-Haul, and he was saying, he's like, man, I really wish you'd chosen differently.
Wow.
I was like, well,
but it's still hurt,
and it hurt, it the unknown factor of what's next. Cause here's the reality. We didn't know what was really next.
Right.
So, I didn't have another church to go to. I didn't have anything sort of lined up. And so my wife and I had been talking like, well, what do we do? And so I told her, I said, well, the logical thing for us to do is probably store a bunch of our stuff. We're going to move our family onto the campus at Midwestern Seminary. I'll be sort of a residential PhD student at the time. And that's what we'll do. I said, I'll get a part-time job or get a job and we'll do that.
So now you're grieving all of the other losses. You think you get a respite of this time away, and then about 3/4 of the way through that, they're like, yeah, no. And then they throw this choice at you. So now you're grieving the losses, and you're grieving, now you've lost your church.
Right. And sort of lost it's my first ministry assignment, right?
Yeah.
It was my first pastorate. So I was thinking like, and there's feelings of like, I failed. I didn't, have I been unfaithful? Did I not do everything right? And
you internalized it.
And so just dealing with all that was difficult. But the Lord took care of us. And I think, in any conflict or any sort of woundedness that happens in ministry, the Lord has a way of caring for his shepherds.
Yeah.
And so here's how I knew that. Here's how I know that to be true. So I told you I was convinced that we were going to live on campus, and my wife had said, "Well, I think we need to pray. I'm pretty sure there's a house that the Lord's going to provide for us."
Yeah.
but you need to be practical.
Yeah. Let's just think clearly about this.
And so I reluctantly, unspiritual as it is, said, "Okay, let's pray. We'll pray about it." But
just know.
But just know,
it's not going to work out that way.
There's about a 99% chance that we're going to live on campus.
So
she's like, I know. She's like, oh, let's pray. Let's pray. I'm like, okay. So we prayed. The next day, I'm having coffee with one of the professors from Midwestern and one of my good friends, Tom Willoughby, and we're discussing the whole situation just over coffee and hanging out. And I'm telling the story, and Dr. Hearson says, "Well, what are you going to do now? What's the plan?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I think move on campus. I think sell a bunch of stuff, get a job, do PhD work." And Tom's sitting there, kind of nodding his head, kind of listening. And then Tom goes, "Well, I was going to say something, man, but it looks like you got it all figured out. But we kind of have this mission home that's right next to our church, and I was going to offer it to you.
I mean,
I was going to offer for your family to live in it, and we would, you can come be part of our church, and and you live there rent free. Like
I mean,
knock me over with a feather,
how
man.
hard was that phone call to your wife to go, yeah, about that prayer?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I look, man, I've been married almost 31 years. The amount of times I've had to tell my wife, "You're right," is like more times than I can
Yeah.
count. So I'm used to that, right?
Well, yeah.
I'm used to sort of eating crow there
Right.
in marriage, but
So
it was a
God opened up
blessing,
this
right? It was this
Bible.
blessing, and actually, so this is interesting. As I think back about it now, we went from a directly wounded environment to an indirectly wounded environment. And here's what I mean by that. We walked into a church in Kansas City that had went from 750 members to 100 in about
Wow.
a month's time span, because they went through a crisis of woundedness where their youth pastor had abused children. Youth had abused youth, and he had done so in Kentucky.
Wow.
And wasn't known, and he came to Kansas City, and got involved with this church, and did it there. And so, in some ironic way, that even when we were wounded, we were able to minister to the wounded, and that was healing.
Oh, yeah.
It gave us, because we just jumped in the middle of it and said, we're gonna love these people. They're hurting. The church is hurting. Our pastor, my Tom at the time, hurting, and trying to hold things together. And so it really produced in us an opportunity for ministry that wasn't. It showed me that ministry is much bigger than a title, right? So, because what I was struggling a little bit with then was a question of identity.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm not a pastor anymore. I'm just church member. I was a pastor. I mean, I'm ordained, but I don't have. That's not my job.
We have that former title. I'm a former pastor.
And I'd gone to work. I'd found a job. My wife's cousin worked in the River Market District, and again, my background in business. He asked me to come help him with his books, and so he ran a trucking sort of logistics company, and so I began working with him, and then we began sort of jumping in with hands and feet into this church and sort of loving them, and I think in some ways it was healing for them as well, because they saw, here's a family that needs to be ministered to, and we can love on them.
It isn't
while we
dynamic.
While we heal. And so as you think about that, it's like the wounded ministering to the wounded, which is like it's a beautiful, messy thing. And I believe to this day that God put us there for that reason.
How did that heal you?
I mean, I think it broadened my understanding of what ministry really is all about. I think it healed me from the standpoint. It kind of gave me purpose. It showed me that God wasn't done with me yet. Because in some ways I thought, well, if I'm not a pastor, does that mean is God done with me as a vocational minister?
Yeah, you failed that calling, so that's
so I didn't do that right, which is ridiculous. It's nothing but Christ in me that's good anyway. And so we move from there. I mean, sort of the end of the story is every ministry assignment I've had. Let me say this: every ministry assignment I had, I've never sent a resume.
Well,
it's always been because the Lord put someone in my life at the right moment, who then referred me and said, backing way up, the way I ended up with at my first church was somebody put a piece of paper in my hand and said, "Hey, contact this church. They're looking for a pastor." And then the way I got to Tom's church was having coffee with Tom. And then the way I got to Lenexa Baptist was having lunch with Wesley Vance.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there and we're just having lunch. He even told me later, he's like, I wasn't even planning on offering you a job. Like, I just wanted to, we went to seminary together. Right. And we're just like, hey, I heard you're back in Kansas City. Let's hang out. Yeah. I want to hear what's going on in your life. And during that lunch at PF Chang's of all place,
he's like, oh, by the way,
he's like, he's like, hey, I got this position at Lenexa. that as a business administrator, is part-time. You come on, do your work here and part-time and work on your PhD, and can kind of be sort of a bridge maybe for you, because I know you want to teach. I was like, wow, I was like, that'd be incredible. And then the next day, Steve Dighton called me and says, he didn't say, hey, I'm going to talk about this job. He's like, hey, you're coming to work at Lenexa.
Hey, yeah, when you start, I need you to.
And I'm like, he's like, hey, you're coming to, like, if you know Steve, I mean, that's Steve, right?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, you're coming to work at Lenexa. And by the way, I just talked to your wife about it. Dude, what? Dirty dog.
It's like, that's not fair.
And so I ended up there, and then, started on as a business administrator. Steve came to me later and said, hey, we want you to be kind of like what we call the college and singles pastor.
Mhm.
We want you to kind of revitalize that ministry. It's kind of floundered a little bit. We want you to be intentional there. And I'm like, Steve, I know nothing about college students other than I was one and not a very good one. And he goes, don't worry about it. He said, just love them.
Yeah, you'll figure.
Pour into them. You figure it out. And so we helped sort of build that ministry there. And then, so when I first came on to being a college pastor, Anthony Allen was one of our Sunday school teachers in the college group.
Mm.
And then he went on to be president of HLG. And then when he had an opening for New Testament, he calls me. So it's like, if I never went through that woundedness at my first church, I never would have ended up full circle back in Hannibal.
Wow.
I mean, just every step prepared me through the woundedness, through the difficulties, to be where I am today.
Mm.
And that can only be, as from a worldview standpoint, I could look at that as one of two ways. I can say, well, I was really lucky I knew some people. I made but hey, man, pretty lucky you made some really close friendships in seminary. And man, you're such a great networker.
Or some people would say you made the right friendships.
Right. Oh, you're so good at networking. It's like, no, that's one way I could look. Or I could say, no, this is the hand of the Lord moving in and through the woundedness, which tells me that no matter what you're going through as a pastor, even in the midst of the chaos and just the suckiness of it, the Lord is still sovereign in it. The Lord still has a plan. He still has a purpose, even when we don't do everything right in the midst of the church conflict or the woundedness that we experience. Because I didn't if we're honest, if I'm honest with myself, reflecting back on it, I didn't do everything right. I was angry at times. I was mad. I said things,
It's kind of like the grieving process.
It is. It's one thing, Matt, it's, this. It's one thing to be mistreated by other Christians because you've been stupid and you've done something wrong.
Right.
Right. Like, okay, that's on me. It's another thing altogether, a different kind of pain altogether, to be mistreated by Christians when you've walked in integrity.
Oh, 100%.
Right. And so I'll never forget, there was a lady in our community in my first church, in fact, our next door neighbor, and she fought cancer, ended up passing away not long before I left the church. We left there. And so she'd be in and out of the hospital. Now, the community where we lived was an hour away from the nearest hospital.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I would try to get to the hospital as much as I could. She was in the hospital a lot, right? Treatments and just, times would be conscious. Sometimes she'd be unconscious. But when I was regularly there seeing her, right?
Right.
And there were times where she didn't know it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I need to leave a note just to cover my rear end to make sure she knows I was there.
You're thinking about the ministry.
Just think about, okay, pray with her, even though she can't hear me. I'm going to pray over her, slip out, maybe go see someone else at the hospital, head back to, home or whatever. And so she got mad because she thought that I didn't come and see her in the hospital. And so she began spreading falsehoods around the community of my pastor doesn't care about me. And she was a prominent person in our community, and people knew her longer than they knew me. And so it's like, oh, well, yeah, surely she's right. This young guy here, come on.
Right.
And so and when I talk about that kind of pain, that you go through, it's like, in a way, it's like, I don't want to compare myself to Job of all things, right? Please no, Lord. But you can kind of get a window, a glimpse into like how Job felt of like when his friends are saying to him, well, clearly God's got something against you and you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I have integrity.
Yeah.
And so in that instance, I believe I had integrity, but your integrity is called into question. And that's a different kind of woundedness than if like I stick my foot in my mouth and do something wrong to someone that I know I probably should repent of and ask their forgiveness.
Well, this is kind of the purpose of this podcast. Some of these stories is because I teach this when I talk about Job. Job didn't need the advice to try to pick and find, well, you must have done something wrong. Job needed somebody to sit in the ashes with him.
Exactly. And I had that. I mean, I was grateful I had, guys around me, like Micah Fries and Ken Parker and Tom Willoughby and Wesley Vance and you guys just to say, look, it's going to be okay. Right? Your ministry is not over. Because the lie that you believe, and you know this, and I know this, the lie that we believe when we go through a season of woundedness is ministry is done.
Yeah.
And then you question like calling and in some ways you question like, does the Lord love me? It's like, why didn't he smite my enemies? Why didn't he fix this situation? And all I can come back to a lot of times is like James chapter 1, right? Suffering produces endurance. And those instances I went through, and there are more that I could talk about that I went through, they produced something in me that wouldn't have been able to have been produced otherwise. And that sucks, man.
100%.
I hate it. I want to grow endurance the easy way.
Yeah.
Just through time.
Yeah.
I don't want to grow endurance through suffering.
Yeah.
Especially unjust suffering. Right. And so I think it hasn't produced, I mean, and I've seen it produce the opposite in a lot of guys. It's produced coldness. It's produced aloofness. It's produced
toxicity,
anger.
What changes, what makes the difference between going down one path or the other?
I think it's a choice.
What made the difference for you?
The people in my life, honestly. I think if I were more isolated, I would have drifted more towards that aloofness and anger. And it's not that I ever wasn't, hear me. It's not that I wasn't ever there. I was mad at times. I was mad at God. I was mad at my deacons. I was mad at the church. I was depressed. I was angry. But I think the people that God had put in my life, like I go back to the church that was wounded and us ministering to the wounded, serving the wounded, right? I think God putting still seeing some of their faces and their stories and just, I think that was the turning point for me. It was the people that would not let me stay in that attitude that spoke to me the perspective that I should have, not that I did have. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. So you're sitting here years after, this, and I know the ministry you're in now. You deal with students, teaching them the Bible, some going into ministry. You get a phone call, pastor calls you up, just happened. Like, what's the first thing you tell them?
God's not done with you yet. Do I know what the next step for you is? No, but I know God's not abandoned you. I think having that right theological perspective is key. Right. And then me urging that person to surround yourself with people that will love you and tell you the truth. Right. As Oscar Wilde once said, a true friend stabs you in the front. Right. Not in the back. And so I think reminding them, don't lose that biblical perspective of who God is in the midst of your pain. because that's where people get derailed. I mean, don't you agree?
100%.
I mean, and that's not just true in ministry. That's true in life. A tragedy happens, something bad happens to someone, and they're, like, well, why would God allow that to happen? He must not love me.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, I mean, theologically, you and I both know this. It's the struggle of the problem of evil, right?
Yeah,
And that could be applied to ministry as well. And so helping them have that healthy perspective, and then making sure that they have a support network, a support group of people. I mean, my support group was not just my wife was wonderful in it, the church, my friends. I mean, I look back, like my dad, I have a great relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
And although he was never a pastor, he has taught me more about being a pastor than probably I've learned in other places. Just how he loves people well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how he cares for people. Man, I want to be like that guy.
Right.
If I'm gonna exemplify anybody in ministry, it would be, my dad. My dad's gentleness, his humility, his love for people, and that's what turned the point.
Yeah, it's interesting that you picked a non-pastor.
Well, man, I'm telling you, like my dad, my uncle Jake, who just recently passed away, Leo Hill. God put some men in my life, strangely, that probably should have been in vocational ministry.
Interesting.
But weren't.
Interesting.
Like, I really believe my dad could have been in vocational ministry. My dad could have been a pastor.
Wow.
My Uncle Jake, certainly. He was a Sunday school teacher here at Calvary for many years. My grandfather, and so it's just like, I didn't know it at the time. But you and I both know this. Like, you become like the people that you hang out with.
Oh, yeah.
And growing up, I mostly hung out with people like, my dad, Uncle Jake, my grandfather, Jesse Adair, all men who exemplified the heart for ministry, even though they weren't a vocational minister.
And that really brought you back.
I mean, the people, I think that having that grounding and that background, but then also the people that God put in my life, the professors, the friends, and then really to see the Lord's hand in shaping and forming and moving us and taking care of us through all of that it was incredible. God showed me that in very practical ways that he hadn't abandoned me, that ministry wasn't over. And it's not. I'm still, even though I'm not a full-time paid vocational pastor, I minister and shepherd my students.
Yeah.
When they let me and when they need it.
So, last question.
Yeah.
Why is it important to tell your story and not be afraid of your own story?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, because one of the lies that we believe in ministry when we go through a period of woundedness, which is so untrue, it's ridiculous, but we believe it, is that no one can understand what I'm going through.
Right.
Like, my situation is so unique and weird and messed up that if I shared it with someone, no one could possibly relate, which is such a lie, man. And that's what the enemy wants to see. He wants to get us isolated. The more I tell my story, I tell it in class, I tell it, here on the podcast or in other places, I find people are like, a lot of times kind of nodding their heads along with me. Like, oh yeah, I know a guy like that.
Yeah.
Right. And then what that does is that breaks the stigmatism down of loneliness and isolation. And that allows then people to speak healing into your life and to help you heal.
Opens the window.
Yeah. Letting people in is hard because you're afraid that they're going to recoil in horror. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you got the big letter A,
Yeah. Like, well, you did that.
Yeah.
I can't believe, like you said that. So I think that's so important in telling your story, not just in ministry. I mean, we have one of our children is like pretty severe bipolar 1. And when we were going through that period with him, we thought no one can understand what we're going through.
Yeah.
Like, this is so weird, man. Like, and So we went to a support group, not even a really Christian support group. But we're sitting around this table with these people, other families, husbands, wives, moms and dads, grandparents, and we're telling our story, and it's weird. Like we're sharing details of like, "Oh, this is really awkward." As I remember, I'll never forget. I looked around the table, and there were people like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, that happened to me." Oh yeah, you just described my daughter.
Wow.
Right? And it's like, and that just sort of like what that does is sort of like
You're not alone.
you're not alone, but then sort of air comes back in the room, right? Where you don't feel like your problems or your experience or your woundedness is like got you in an MMA chokehold that's not going to let you go,
Yeah.
right? And you've got to fight this private battle. What a lie!
It's turning the light on.
Yeah, it's like what a lie. It's exposing the lies of the enemy.
Yeah.
And it's you're right. It's like calling people out of like this dark place to a place of light and healing, and that's painful. It hurts, right? Because again, like I said before, even in the midst of all the woundedness, I made some pretty stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
I said some pretty stupid things that I've had to repent over, and I've had to work my way through. But looking back now, I'm like, again, like would I, the question is like, if I knew what I knew now, would I still do that? And the answer is probably yeah.
100%. I would do it.
Yeah. Because it's made me,
Made you who you are.
well, it's made me who I am, but it's made me a more, sort of, I don't want to use empathy, such a buzzword right now, but like empathetic, like towards the plight of others, like in ministry. It's helped me to be able to prepare my students more realistically for what they'll face.
It's like Paul would say, being made complete in Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't want people to,
We
if
want
I
the
can
good side.
if I can avoid
Easy
like
side.
for my students, like not that I want to paint this horrific picture of ministry to them where they just go, well, I'm not going to do that.
But just make
I
them
think I
ready.
might go sell insurance instead.
Yeah.
But if they can walk into ministry with less of an idealistic picture than I had, then that's a victory. I mean, it's one thing to throw someone in a battle that's an idealist and then say, good luck.
Right.
It's another thing altogether to say, you might need to have a sword on you.
Well, this is an honorable thing. Go for it.
It's an honorable thing, but it's going to be hard.
But be
prepared. You're going to be cut. You're going to be wounded. People are going to say things that are awful.
Ready. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. One funny story, and then I know we need to wrap up.
Yeah.
So my habit always was, when I was first, it still is, if I'm preaching at a place, or pastoring, is I'm gonna preach through a book of the Bible.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I never forget, I'd preach through the Gospel of Mark, and we had this new family come to church, younger family. We're excited about them, and so I just started a sermon series on 1st and 2nd Peter. So I was going to preach through 1st and 2nd Peter, right? And so, they're not big books, but it's going to take a while to get through them. And I remember I was about 6 months, maybe 6 months into it, and I always stood at the back. It's country church, stand at the back of church, greet people, say,
shake the hands,
right? And I'll never forget this. This guy comes up to me, and he says to me, he's mad. He's like, he's mad. I'm like, I can tell he's mad. He says his demeanor on his face, like he's mad. And at that point, you kind of, what could he be mad about?
Yeah.
Well, the only thing is like the sermon.
Here we go again.
And you just kind of tense up and you just kind of brace yourself.
Ready for it.
For the comment. And you know what he said to me? He said, this is what he said. He looked at me, shook my hand. He goes, great sermon, Pastor, but. And again, it's at that point you're like, oh,
here it comes.
Here it comes. He goes, great sermon, Pastor, but when are you going to preach on the words of Jesus? And I looked at him about kind of like how you're looking at me now. I was trying not to laugh. I was trying to think, but also have this kind of this in my mind. I'm trying this puzzled kind of like, what? And before I could get a word out, my wife's gripping my hand. She's saying that she's gripping my hand tighter.
Don't say it.
Like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Take the bait.
And before I can get a word out, he goes, he must have seen the look of processing on my face. So he kind of beat me the punch. He goes, the word's in red. And it was at that point, Matt, where I could have said, And I literally, the words were, again, forming in my mind, almost to my tongue. My wife's gripping my hand. And I literally thought about saying, listen, idiot, they're all his words.
Yeah, but that would not have helped.
But I didn't. And I was just like, I kept my mouth shut. I shook his hand. I goes, well, I appreciate that. We're going to circle back around, I'm sure, to the Gospels at some point. And hope you're still here and with us when we do that. But just, that's what, like, ministry, man. I mean, people will say
like that.
People will say things. I had a deacon that used to say to me all the time, Pastor, we pay you to be good, but we're good for nothing. That was his favorite phrase. He would say that to me all the time.
Every Sunday.
Well, when does that imply?
We don't have to do it. We don't have to be good.
We're paying you not to make a mistake.
Yeah, we're paying you to be perfect.
Yeah, you're our example. You better not mess up.
Good luck with that.
Right? I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, did you really say that, man?
Well, I give a little teaser on a future podcast. I am going to share a little. I'm going to be interviewed by a friend of mine for the same podcast. And I've got one of those similar stories you'll have to tune into.
I will. That's a good teaser for what's coming.
I did not, however, hold my tongue. So.
Yeah, there were times, believe me, that I told you the one time I didn't hold my tongue. You know, I sat through Dr. Divine's class. I know what it's not like to hold your tongue, right? To zing someone.
We are going to have to come back for a round 2 because we have so much that we have not yet discussed. So many stories we need to go. That's what you get with over 20 years of history.
I'm telling you.
But man, Eric, it's been so good to have you.
Good to be here.
The vulnerability, sharing your story, and just want to segue. You know, I call this Wounded Leadership Stories from the Wounded, but it's a transition. It's going from wounded to healing. You still carry the wounds, but you're healing. So if you're listening to this, and I know there's so many they're going to be hearing that are going to be identifying with maybe just one or all parts of the story. I want to let you know go to woundedleadership.com. We're going to have, of course, links to the podcast, other episodes, but we're going to have some resources there. There's a tab that's going to be there that you can share your story. Say, you know what, I'm ready to share my story. You may even want to be a guest on the podcast or something. You just need to write it out. And so do so on that. We also have a community called the Pastor's Compass. It's the Pastor's Compass. And it's just kind of an online community where you're going to find even more resources. There's a chat room area for the wives where you can just have a voice. And like I said, that support group that you found, well, there's going to be a lot of people on the Pastor's Compass. As you're typing, they're nodding. It's
huge. And it's huge from the pastor's wife's standpoint as well.
Yeah, because the family
you could do a whole podcast series of just like talking to pastor's wives, and some of the stories you'll draw out of them are like, will blow your mind.
What they see and have to deal with.
Or what people say to them.
Yeah, 100%. You know? So you're going to find that. So go to woundedleadership.com, thepastorscompass.com. Listen, tune in to more of these podcasts in the future. Eric, you're a great friend. Thank you, brother, for being here and sharing your story, man.
Great. My privilege.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you, man.
All right, bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Wounded Leadership Podcast, Stories from the Wounded. We hope today's conversation has given you valuable insight into how vulnerability and resilience work to shape truly authentic leadership. Remember, our wounds don't define us. Every scar tells a story of survival, and every setback creates an opportunity for extraordinary growth. If today's episode resonated with you, please visit us at woundedleadership.com. where you're going to find resources, community forums, opportunities to share your own leadership journey. I also invite you to subscribe, rate, review this podcast on your favorite platform. Your support helps us to reach more leaders who might be struggling in silence. Till next time, this is Dr. Matthew Tanner reminding you that your wounds can become your greatest source of wisdom, connection, and strength. It's the Wounded Leadership Podcast, transforming wounds into wisdom, one story at a time.